Welcome to Safety Talk. Personal safety expert Pete Canavan shares his insights and interviews experts who provide simple and effective tips, techniques, and technologies to keep you safe and secure both online and off. Here's Pete.
Hello and welcome to Safety Talk. We've got another informative episode for you today, and we will be focusing on both offensive and defensive cybersecurity with today's guest and the solutions that you can find at a conference that is put on by he and his company and they're a part of. Now, we know that cyber criminals continue to get bolder. They carry out more frequent and ever damaging cyber attacks. And companies must do all that they can from both a technological as well as a financial standpoint that makes sense anyway to protect their business and ensure the continuity of that business. So today you're going to learn a little bit more about how your company can discover different ways that you can do just that. Now, of course, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to Safety Talk on your favorite podcast and help us spread the word and keep everyone safer and more secure. I'm your host and safety sensei, Pete Canavan, and my guest on this episode of Safety Talk is Anant Shrivastava. He's the founder of Cyfinoid Research with experience in both offensive and defensive cybersecurity, development, and operations. He frequently speaks and provides training at many cybersecurity conferences, including Black Hat, NullCon, and ConCon, among others. He also open source projects, notably the Tamer platform and Code Vigilant, and curates the hacking archives of India, which is where he is located, come to us from India today. When not engaged in official work, he contributes to open source communities that have a shared goal of spreading information security knowledge. We could all use a little bit more of that. He's especially active in the Null community, and that is what we're going to be talking primarily about today. So what can they do to help your company? Let's find out. So I want to, with pleasure, welcome Anant from Cyfinoid to Safety Talk. Welcome.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all about, how we can make both individuals and businesses safer and more secure. We see the threats aren't going away. They're getting worse. They're getting more frequent. Anybody can be a target. And so we appreciate you joining us. And, we'll talk a little bit about how, we can further educate people because the criminals evolve along with us and the technology we use to run our businesses. And with the rapid rise of AI, of artificial intelligence, the criminals have even more tools at their disposal, which means that today's companies are even more vulnerable than ever before. And so the sharing of information in both the tech community and the business community is imperative. And that's kind of where Cyfinoid comes in, correct?
That's where NullCon definitely plays a big role. So to give you a background about the conference itself, NullCon is right now one of the biggest conferences in India and rather I would say South Asia in its entirety when it comes to information security domain. This year, we had about 3,000 attendees there. And frankly, we had to close registrations for some of the events because we were running out of space for them. Hoping that we'll have more and more people coming in. The conference originated out of a community called Null Community back in 2010. So the community started 2008 with an idea of sharing knowledge with peers. And some of the founders of the community thought that it's a good idea to have a conference around this. So that's where NullCon came into picture. So okay. NullCon as a conference has been running since 2010. 2011 is when I first got into NullCon. And since then, I have been attending the conference. And I started as a attendee, then went on as a speaker. I've also done workshops there. And for past couple of years, I've been helping the entire Payatu team, which runs NullCon, with the whole organizational activities. So I'm part of the review process. I also participate in the background activities around what to do in the conference, how to do it, new funky things that we could do, which brings more crowd into the conference and effectively create the awareness around it.
So the conference is obviously open to the global community. It's located in India, correct?
Yes.
So let's start off, kind of take a step back for a minute. Tell us a little bit about your background and what has really driven your interest in cybersecurity and kind of brought you to where you're at this point in your life.
All right. So, in very brief, I started working with computers since around 1995. 2000 is when I first spotted Linux, and I started playing around with it, installing it on my systems, and just configuring services and whatnot, reading Linux user groups online, Yahoo groups, and whatnot. Uh, 2008 is when I got into the corporate world. I started as a server administrator. Somewhere around 2010 is when I moved into the security community and the security domain, because that kind of felt like a natural extension to server administration. I knew how to defend my server, but I was more curious on what happens on the other side. What are the other things that are there? And that's how the security domain came into picture. This is the time when I also got involved into null community, and from null community to the whole wider group of communities that are there. I have had experience ranging from server administration to, say, developing softwares around PHP and Python to, for past couple of years, doing full-time information security work, ranging from pen testing to red teaming to setting up pipelines for people, the whole DevSecOps keyword areas, to now focusing around supply chain security and the distributed web and the mobile areas right now. So that's kind of the in short summary of my exposure.
No, that's perfect. I appreciate that. It gives kind of people an idea as to how, your background and what you were doing initially sort of, brought you here. Because as somebody who also deals with, networks and server administration and stuff, it definitely helps us if we understand what threats are out there and what, we need to look for so that we can protect the networks that are, in our care, and keep them from being, the victims of a cyber attack, of a hacking attempt. And, there's a whole lot that goes into that. And obviously, it's well beyond the scope of a single conversation. And that's why having a conference that exposes people to a lot of different, solutions and technologies and things that you may not be aware of is so important. I mean, I love going to conferences like this because you always come across more than one thing, right? Multiple things. And you're like, oh man, I didn't even know something like that existed, and then you see it and you learn about it. And now it's something that if it's relevant, you can look at, how you can incorporate it into your own business, into your own company, and utilize those technologies.
Definitely. So I'll give an example for this. So at NullCon, on one side, we have talks happening which are around the new and innovative things people are finding. Like, for example, this year, there was a talk around UPI, or there was a talk around biometric security. There was a talk about someone figuring out how to open locks because all the locks were effectively communicating over Bluetooth protocol, and they were able to find the right signals. So they were able to open all the locks. So this was the technical side that was happening. While at the same time, there was another track which was totally focused on the CXO side of the equation, where people were basically talking about, hey, cloud exists. Should my organization, which is a non-IT organization, be dealing with cloud or not? Should government be going into cloud or not? Or to the startups and the entrepreneur community, where there were discussions ranging from, should I even take funding from a venture capitalist, or what does venture capitalist look for while giving a security startup funding, to how do you self-sustain and how do you make money while building your own product. Parallelly, there were workshops happening where people could basically just do hands-on activities ranging from lock picking to, say, soldering your own hardware badges. And then cross it with what you were saying about tools and techniques. So there were live places available where people had, or organizations had, their presence, and they were demonstrating their products. You could ask questions. A lot of these booths, the good part was most of these booths had either the founder available with them or the people who were technically inclined available to you. So it was not just the marketing people selling you things. It were the real technical people actually helping you with the answers and helping you use their tool in a better way. So
I'm glad you brought that up.
The conference. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you
Yep.
brought that up because, I think some people believe like a conference that like this would be just for like techies, right? But you're saying no, that there are
Yep.
different tracks because if you're more technical,
Yes.
there are things that are there and available for you to learn. For example, like you just mentioned, you have people who are the technical, the programmers, the technicians, the people that are actually working on the products. But then you've also got the people involved in explaining how that technology can work to the people that are the decision makers in the company, right? Like the CISOs,
Yep.
the CEOs,
Yep.
the people that don't care about, I don't care how it works, just is it going to work, right?
Yeah. So we try to cater the entire range, right? From I want to get into the information security industry to a person who is in the industry for a very long time, looking to refresh their skill set, to someone who's trying to upskill themselves, to someone who is at the executive position. And like you said, I don't care how it works. Is it going to work? Is it going to be the useful thing for me? And so the entire range is what we cover. Besides what I talked about, there are also resume clinics where we are trying to help freshers or people who are just starting with their career, how to get into good corporate jobs. We have tracks which are, so there was a CTF organized called Winja CTF. This has been a trademark CTF for the conference for, I think, about 7-8 years now, where the focus is to nurture and bring women in information security. We are short of women in information security domain, and this is our way of bringing more women in the information security community. So yeah, it has everything for at least something for everyone.
No, that's great because, it is typically a male dominated industry, but yet there are plenty of women that are highly skilled that are valuable
Definitely.
resources to a company because the bottom line is that it doesn't matter, man or woman, if you have the skills and the knowledge that can assist a company and deliver results, that's the important thing. I don't care,
Yeah.
who you
Yeah.
are. The
Definitely.
bottom line is, are you, skilled in what it is that you bring to the table, and is it going to work for me? And that's it's very important that we realize that. And so it's good that you mentioned that because again, there's a lot to know. We can't all know everything. And also, there's a different perspective, right? Because as men, you and I, we see things a certain way. Okay, we can't help that. It's because of our nature. It's our gender. It's just how we view the world. It's how we view threats. It's how we view opportunities, et cetera, right? We look at things a certain way. Women look at things differently. And so having a different perspective into other aspects of whatever it is that we're trying to analyze or assess is extremely valuable. I mean, I've worked with companies that are male dominated that have a product for women. You know what? That's a tough nut to crack, pardon the expression, because you've got, men trying to sell things to women. And then, on the flip side, if you've got women trying to sell things to men, it's not always going to be the easiest thing to do. So if you have a full range of perspectives that allow you to, and basically enable them to give a range of perspectives and viewpoints, that's really valuable in every business, I feel.
Yeah, definitely.
So it sounds like, in terms of who could benefit, really anybody at any level within an organization from the top down could benefit, whether it's someone who's involved in the day-to-day technical operations as like an administrator or something like that, all the way up to, C-suite executives, correct?
That's the aim. That's the aim.
So in terms of topics, is it broken down into like how, I guess my question is, how is it organized in terms of the tracks? So if you are someone who's technical, how is that broken down? Is it, cybersecurity, is it done by industry? Is it done by technology? Maybe we could just kind of talk about that for a little bit to sort of give people an understanding of what, of how it's laid out and what they could expect.
So generally, the way conference operates is there are two technical tracks with two. The aim is to have two totally separate topics, so people don't have to decide between attending this or that. So if there's a hardware talk happening, the other talk would not be a hardware talk, would be a software level talk. So these talks don't compete with each other. That's the aim. Then, like I said, there's a CXO track. So effectively, what we try to do is the kind of audience who would be interested in attending a set of sessions in a series, those all are bundled together at one place. So they don't have to keep shuffling around. Like India has a very big community, which is a bug hunters community. The whole bug bounty market and the bug hunter community is very big in India. So we have a dedicated track which is focused around the bug hunting community. Generally, HackerOne, BugCrowd, Google, Facebook, these companies would be making a presence there, and they would basically be going through the whole process. So the idea is not just to tell people, hey, do bug hunting and earn more money, but rather, hey, how do you do it properly? What are the good things to keep in mind? How it is beneficial for you, how it is beneficial for us. So those tracks are also there. Then a lot of folks basically attend such events with an idea that, hey, I want to do something hands-on. So that's where workshop tracks are there. On and off, we also keep having a track called Ammo track, which is effectively tools demonstration. So open source tools, if we have good enough number of open source tools in the submissions, we basically keep an ammo track where for 2 days, a tool gets to demonstrate their own usefulness. And the difference between a talk versus a tools track is, in a talk, you're talking about a scenario, a hypothetical situation, or something that happened in past. People can take that learning and repurpose it however they want to do in their own world. But when it comes to the tools track, it's about, hey, this is the open source tool which is available. This is how you can use it. If you have a question, come and talk about it. If you have suggestion, you can talk about it. And from tonight onwards, you can basically just download the tool and use it. So,
and that is the beautiful thing about open source, is it's free,
exactly.
right? I mean, it's everybody, it's a community driven, it doesn't matter what the project is, but if it's part of the open source, movement, everybody contributes, everybody makes it better. You add a little bit, I add a little bit, other people add a little bit, and it, we all contribute to making it better. Obviously, people are, validating what it is that the work that's going into it to ensure, hey, is this good code? Is it bad code? Could it be tweaked or optimized? But essentially, at the end of the day, everybody is helping to make these things better, so we can, have every possible tool at our disposal to keep our systems and our networks and our accounts protected, and ultimately our people, right? Because I mean, if the business is compromised and there's a problem, that could cause issues not just with with the management and the staff, but now you've got problems with customers and clients and vendors and suppliers, and if you've got some sort of intellectual property that's stolen, that could be hugely detrimental. Next thing you know, you've got a company that's got your product and it's a knockoff made out of some other country at a third the price. Well, you're out of business if that happens, right? So there's a lot of things that are out there. So one of the things when you were talking, I was thinking, how long does the conference run for?
So the conference is for 2 days.
Okay.
So the way it operates is, there is before conference, we have a certain set of trainings. So there's a 3-day training or a 2-day training before the conference.
Like
then
a virtual
there's 2
training?
days of conference. There's some virtual, mostly it's physical right now. Okay. But yeah, there are some virtual options also. Then 2 days of 2 days of the conference. And then what we realized over years was, some of the folks are better off doing trainings after the conference. So we do post-conference trainings also. Some set of trainings happen pre-conference, some happen post-conference. So effectively, it becomes a 3+3+2. So about 8 days of total events.
Oh, wow. So people can really crunch a lot of training and a lot of knowledge into those days. And I think it's a really good idea to have it at the, post-conference, because when you're there, you don't want to miss anything, right? You're trying to see this presentation and this presentation and learn about this tool. And it's like, I don't want to take time up from something else that I could be learning about to dive deeper into this. I'll go deeper into that later. So that's awesome that you give them the opportunity to do that once, kind of the dust settles from the 2 days of conference and their brains are ready to explode and, everything has been absorbed. It's like, okay, now they probably have made some notes like, hey, I really want to learn more about this technology and this tool, et cetera. Now they can go and spend that extra time, spend a few hours with each one of them instead of, 15 minutes at a booth.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's great. So that's, it sounds like it's really something that allows anybody to get exposed to a lot of information, and then of course give you the opportunity to dive deeper into it with, basically getting it right there, right from the source. And there's no better way to learn than being able to ask questions from the person who helped develop or design the project or the product, right? Because you may not understand something, and they can be like, "Well, we did it this way because," and you go, "Oh, I didn't think of that." So it gives you deeper perspective and understanding into different things, and especially with technology, right? There's so much out there to know. Nobody can know everything. We all can learn from each other, and that's really what something like this is all about. Is sharing information and making people aware of stuff.
Another interesting aspect that I've found is if you are from, say, offensive background, you don't want to deep dive into defense, but attending a talk which is focused on defense gives you a very quick idea or a glimpse into their world. And maybe you would end up saying, hey, you know what, this sounds more exciting than what I was doing so far. Let me jump into this. And that's something that I've seen happening in the conferences. People with a very contrasting background attended sessions which are totally different. And then a couple of years later, they have basically switched their streams.
Interesting. Well, hey, we all get bored with stuff after we've been doing it for a long time, right? I'm glad you mentioned offensive and defensive, because it's very important that people understand the difference. Maybe you can, for our listeners, give you your take on the main differences and why someone would want to know at least a little bit about the other, depending on their area of focus.
All right. So I would draw the attention towards the keynote that happened this year, which was effectively by John Lambert, who is from Microsoft. And the starting of the keynote was with a screenshot of 6 different approaches that you can have towards defending yourself. And he was taking it in a classic sense, in like a medieval defense. Like a defense does not just only means a helmet. It could also mean a shield. It could also mean a barricade and different sort of symbols there. But effectively, to your question, what I would suggest, or what I would tell everyone is, knowing how you operate in your own domain is one thing, but knowing how the other person is going to operate and react and act when whatever you are doing will happen, that gives you a better perspective around how to deal with things. Also, at the end of the day, we are an InfoSec domain. InfoSec is not about breaking things. The end goal of InfoSec is to secure the organization. When you take that approach in mind, the amount of attacks that you can mount on the organization is not going to help anyone if you don't know how to protect against them. So on one side, no one is asking a red teamer to tell me how to protect, but having a realistic idea about what protections could exist in the market around the attack that you're trying to mount would give you a realistic chance of having a proper discussion when you're sitting in a team. So for example, just 2 examples. If you're talking about a DDoS attack, that I did a DDoS attack and I collapsed your entire organization, and you should you should have some DDoS protection. Like, it's easy to say that you should have DDoS protection. It's hard to actually have DDoS protection in an organization. At one point, the organization would say, okay, yeah, you know what? After this much volume of incoming attack, we would have to accept the defeat. So that kind of realization, if you have, helps you in setting the right boundaries, setting the right expectations. Otherwise, things just go haywire. And it's the inverse way also. You can't just go and say, hey, you're the attacker. You should be able to crack the application in 2 hours. That's the time I'm giving you to just do the testing before the deployment to production happens. So both sides need to understand how the dynamics work. And then it'll be an easier sort of mutual growth for both sides.
And the analogy I would say is kind of like chess, right? Where you're trying to think ahead. You're trying to think moves ahead of what could they do and how could I defend against it. And you need to sort of almost like read their mind. And if you know both sides of it, like, for example, if you're purely looking at things from a defensive standpoint, how do I stop things? Well, okay, you have that perspective, right? You have that mindset, you have the defensive mindset. But knowing the different ways that those attacks and those hacks can occur is going to give you a better, more well-rounded perspective of that. So if there's an attack or an offensive strategy that you have not really known about or know much about or been exposed to because it's never happened to you, for example, use an example of a DDoS, distributed denial of service attack, which can happen to any organization. It happens to many, many, many every single day, right? Where your connection is just being flooded until you become unusable. But that is something where there have to be layers of protection that, until you, as you said, admit defeat. Does that mean, we pull the plug and reboot everything? How do we deal with it? We have to involve the ISP, and have something happen at their level. So they're different, those layers. And as you said, the keynote that was done talks about that. You may have a moat right around your castle, and then you got the walls of the castle, and then once you get into the castle, you've got maybe fences or barricades. And so I kind of get that analogy because I'm a martial artist, so I get the whole offensive defensive mindset very more than most, I would say. And you have to have both, right? In order to defend yourself, whether it's from a cyber attack or a physical attack, you've got to be familiar with what sort of attacks you need to defend against. Otherwise, you can't adequately defend yourself or your company.
Yes.
And so I like that analogy, and I use it quite a bit because I have experience in both realms. Now, on the recovery side of it, because we all have seen attacks occur that have become successful, right? A hacker with the motivation, the time, the money, the resources, and the desire is going to hack into your business. I don't care what it is, right? There's no such thing as 100% secure unless you're completely air-gapped. And that's really not 100% secure anyway, because somebody could walk into that room with a flash drive, pop it in, and boom, trash the system. So there is no such thing as 100% secure. What we can do, and I'm sure there are some tracks at the conference about this, and if not, you and I are going to have to talk about it, but on the whole recovery side of it, because so much attention is given to the prevention of attacks and what can we do to prevent these attacks. Well, what about the other side of that? Once you are attacked, how are you going to recover from that, right? What threats do you realistically have to prepare for? What risks, are there to your business, specifically? And then how much resources can you afford to pour into those defenses? Because you can't afford to spend $5 million to secure a $1 million company. Doesn't make sense, right? So there's a system that you've got to sort of go through. And I have a great program that does this, where you take a look at those risks and you figure out, hey, what is our threat? What's the threat assessment? What's the chance of these different risks occurring? And then what are some, realistic, tangible investments that we can make, and from a financial and a monetary standpoint, that aren't going to cripple us, but are going to give us an adequate level of protection. And then knowing full well that they may not work. So what's the plan B and the plan C and the plan D? And you better have a few of those so that you ensure that you stay in business and don't go out of business. So you ensure the business continuity, when an attack occurs, because it is a matter of when, it's such an overused cliche, not if, but when. But guess what? When you look at the numbers, and you see the numbers all the time, the number of attacks on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, is staggering. And so it's, we're naive if we think it's not going to happen, because it's going to happen to your business one day, probably more than once, right?
Yeah. So what I've seen from the conferences standpoint, and this is not just NullCon, but rather a large number of other conferences also, there was a wave when prevention was the key factor. Right now, it's not recovery. Right now, it's the detection, which is the key criteria which everyone is focusing on. Right. So how do I detect an attack? So no one is talking about building the whole layers of defense, but everyone is like, attack is going to happen. Why worry about building layers? Build a basic set of layers, but then focus on detection. you should be able to identify when an attack has happened. Recovery is something that is still not that much talked about. And I
I
am
know.
hoping,
That's why I'm
I'm
focusing on
really
that.
hoping what do you say, the hacks that happened at Las Vegas casino chains, Caesar and the other one, I totally forgot the name, but the two big hotel chains, both of them got hacked, ransomed, and then one of them paid, one of them did not paid, and they are still trying to get the businesses up and running. Those I am hoping would kickstart the whole idea around let's talk about recovery, because right now the trouble that I see is people are not even confident about their own backups. They know
That's
that the backup
scary.
happens, but a lot of them don't even know how to recover from their backups, or given a chance of whether I should bank on recovering from my backup or should I pay a ransom. A lot of people might actually tilt towards paying ransom because they'd be like, at least I'll have a guarantee that the data would be recovered. So that's a strange position to
if
be
the
in.
cyber criminal provides the key and they let you
Yeah.
unencrypt your data, because and I just gave a presentation on this exact scenario, because if you do pay the ransom, right? Let's say they want,
There's no
whatever,
guarantee.
$25,000 and you get your key back. Well, you pay the 25 grand and now they say, you know what? We want another 10. It's like, wait a minute, I just paid you. Well, okay, you did. And now they know that you've got the resources. Now you paid it. Now you got to pay them more to do it. Well, now you pay them another 10. What's to say they don't say, all right, give us another 10. Now, to be fair, and it's pretty ironic, but it's true, most of these perpetrators of ransomware attacks are ethical, right? You pay the ransom, they give you your key.
I was hoping you'd use that term.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny, but you know what? If they didn't, then the whole scam falls apart, right? If everybody paid the ransom and nobody ever got the keys back, well, guess what? You're never going to pay another ransom. Now, of course, CISA, right, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agency of the government in the United States here, says, don't pay the ransom. And you really shouldn't, because you're validating what you're doing them.
Exactly.
You're giving them more resources that now they can dump into more attacks to cause more damage and wreak more havoc and make more money. And it's a perpetual cycle. And it's not good. So having a good plan, in addition to good backups, and I agree with you 100%, companies don't trust the backup, and they don't want to take the downtime on say a Saturday night to pull the system down, restore from a backup and see if it works. They're afraid to do it. Well, that's why you should have a second system, have a redundant server, restore it to that, see what happens. Have there are ways that you can test it, but I think they're like, it's too inconvenient. We don't want to do it. We don't want to pay the overtime. It's like, pay the overtime. What are you going to pay if you get hacked? Or what's the consequence if you go out of business? I mean, it's a drop in the bucket when you look at the big picture.
Yeah. And I think that's where I am hopeful about the whole Vegas casino hacks, because that's going to give tangible numbers as the losses they've incurred. One company paid the ransom, got their systems back in 2-3 days. The other company had to deal with it for 15-20 days. So the amount of losses both of them incurred would give people an idea that, hey, this has consequences. And the more adapt you are to this, the more you are aware of your own systems, the easier it would be to deal with it. And that's where the other pet peeve of mine comes into picture. People, and this is for everyone in information security industry, or rather IT industry, not information security industry, people are reckless when they start building things. They don't care about where they're sourcing the inputs from, and be it open source, be it commercial, whatever. People are reckless when they're adding more stuff into their organization. And there's a term, attack surface, and the ideal approach is to have minimal attack surface, but no one is going to go for the ideal approach. So attack surface keeps on increasing, and resources deployed to help with that keeps on decreasing.
Yeah, and the more of an attack surface you have, the more vulnerable you are, and the more fronts you've got to defend.
Exactly.
We go back to this scenario of like a castle, et cetera, and defending yourself. If you've got to defend yourself from the front, from the back, from both sides, from on top, from down, like, whoa, hey, how you do that? If you can at least focus your defenses in one area, because that's where you're vulnerable, that makes so much more sense to an organization. And I agree 100%. A lot of people, when they're building solutions, they're not thinking this. It's like, oh, we're going to use this piece over here, and our phones are going to use this, and the data is going to be here, and our backups are going to go there, and our CRM system's going to be there, and our marketing's going. It's like now you've got all of these disparate solutions. Stuff is not integrated. You're spread all over the place. It's nearly impossible to have an adequate defense strategy for all of that. And smaller companies don't have the resources. They just go, well, hopefully it doesn't happen. That's not a strategy.
I mean, this is where I think information security industry going forward needs to start looking at turnkey solutions or solutions which actually help smaller entities have a basic set of security. Right now, I think there are a large number of companies who don't even support SSO authentication as a basic level, even at a paid tier level. It's always an enterprise feature or a highly paid tier where SSO gets added into the bucket. So this is where the whole approach towards security kind of goes haywire, where people are even putting a gatekeep in front of basic solutions, which are maybe earlier they were not basic enough. Now they are basic essential entities because we are not living in a world where you could have a VPN and everything remains inside. Everything is out in the open, zero trust, and the whole cloud movement has basically gotten one clear thing that you should use whatever is available. And that basically means half of your stuff is all over the internet.
Yeah. And, and you mentioned early on in our conversation about the cloud and the reliance on it, well, I know personally, I have clients that are just not comfortable with that. They do not want to put their information on a cloud. I have some attorneys that are clients. They absolutely are dead set against it. There are companies out there that provide solutions for them. They don't want it. They would rather keep everything in-house on their servers, protected on the internal network. And they've been doing that for a long time. And so far, knock on wood, right, it's been working. But the minute, as you said, the data is out there, it's out there. And now if somebody manages to hack into it, who knows where it goes? Like you said, it's all over the place in an instant. And that's not good for anyone.
Yeah. And I'm going to pitch conference again. But effectively, this is where sending your team to events like conference events is where it helps. Even though you're not planning to go to cloud right now, just being part of the conversations around how people are leveraging cloud and how does that fits into your equation. Maybe you may end up talking with someone who has got experience dealing with those scenarios. And that's the other very important aspect of conferences. It's not what is happening inside the rooms, but what happens outside the room, in the hallway, in the discussion that you have while you are having lunch or while you're just walking to a place where a similar talk is going to happen. Both of you wanted to attend that talk and you start talking and you end up realizing there are more common factors. And you then end up having connects which are more powerful connects than what you would have learned in a talk per se. So
you're
that's
absolutely right. It's a lot of times it's what happens out of the room that's so important, like at a lunch or just in conversation with people, because it becomes powerful because now you can form alliances and relationships with people that, can help each other, long term. When the conference is over, the conference is over, right?
Yes.
The relationships can last a lot longer than that. So at the for example, this conference, what are some of the topics that are most commonly presented or discussed at there?
So while we are structuring the conference, the aim is to have diversity of topic as much as possible. So everyone has something to look for in the talks. So on one side, we had James Kettle, who was talking about web application security attacks. Two, we had Nemo presenting on UPI hacks. UPI is the payment integration technology. So this is designed in India and is now being used across the globe. Multiple countries have started adopting it. So instead of having credit cards as our main source of swipe ups, we basically have a system of APIs connected with all the banks. So it does not matter which bank account you use. You can basically fund transfer from one person to another person using a common ID. And the whole layers of complexity are removed. So you don't have to worry about what their account is, what their banks is, what their bank hours are.
That's
There's a
almost
common
like
ID and you
crypto.
can kind of like crypto.
Goes from me to
But
you without the bank, right?
yeah. And so the banks are involved, the banks are there, but the complexity is kind of taken away
Right.
from a normal human. So they just have to scan a QR code and then do the fund transfer, and it's an immediate transfer that happens. So that technology is developed in India. So Abhay Rana, who was the person talking about UPI hacks, he was talking about his experience. So he comes from a background of an organization where he was working in financial background and was dealing with UPI implementation for their platform. So he talks about his whole journey around how he has developed his own app to understand how the whole protocol works, found a bunch of flaws in it, how they then went about getting them noticed with people and getting some of them fixed. To then we had talks around biometric security. To then we had talks about eBPF. So eBPF is a feature that is added into Linux environments. It has huge potential when it comes to protecting the environment, but something that has not been way too commonly used and made available. So we had a proper talk which was talking about just eBPF itself. And then we had workshops, panels. So a whole bunch of topics were taken together. So if you ask me to have a theme for the conference, there was no single theme. So I can't say that it was a web application security conference or an infrastructure conference, because that's the conscious aim that we have as much diversity of topics as possible.
So how about maybe the most interesting or surprising or unique sort of technology or finding at the conference, or that you've sort of found in the past that you said, wow, it really made you sort of it surprised you, I guess?
Yeah, so I think eBPF has that potential for me from a defense point of view. The attack side, after a few years, start feeling like a bit boring, because at the end of it, you realize there are misconfigurations or the protocol itself is not secure. Like, for example, I told you about a Bluetooth related talk where there were locks, and those locks were talking about Bluetooth, and it was unencrypted, and people were able to get in if they knew what signals to send over. So on the offense side, it's good to know as a reminder that, hey, this situation has not improved, it's still the same. On the defense side, things like eBPF actually make you think, okay, yeah, this is something interesting. It's not that big a deal right now, but let me go back, let me bring my team together, and let's start exploring this as an area where, yeah, this could be something.
Yeah, and that's the whole point, right? To get exposed to new solutions that could potentially help. So in terms of a global effect, what would you say that the activities at Nullcon have really done to help strengthen global cybersecurity?
So we get the audience from across the globe. So it's not limited to India that we're getting audience across the globe. The speakers are from all over the places. When it comes to defining the impact of a conference, the way I look at it is, people who have been attending these conferences, have they gone ahead and helped organizations build secure solutions? Have they gone ahead and built their own organizations and done something for the industry? And that's where I feel proud, because a large chunk of people who were, so let me put it this way. This year at Nullcon, when we were having booths from commercial vendors who were presenting their own ideas, there were a bunch of those booths which were actually members of Nullcon, or people who have attended these conferences many, many years. So they basically started in this conferences in this arena, then grew within the community, and then they now have their own products, their own services, and now they are coming in as a different entity, as a vendor, and they are presenting their whole ideas. So when I see that, then I see, yes, the conference has given value to the environment. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, because, you know, it shows that there's that progression, right? From people that have attended, you know, simply as an attendee, and maybe it made them start to realize, hey, there's more to this than I realized. And it's,
Yep.
they've come back, they've learned more, and then it's turned into, a bit of a passion for them, right? To go and
Yes.
develop their own company or products around something that they learned about there. I mean, that's
Yeah.
neat. So it's almost even fostering entrepreneurship.
Yes. Yes.
which is pretty neat. So for people that want to learn more about the intricacies and the technologies that are involved with cybersecurity, what do you recommend to those people?
So
Attend
I'll
NullCon, other
classify.
conferences? What would you say?
Yeah. So I'll classify them in two categories. There is what do you say, corporate world people, and there are people who are in the corporate world. Pre-corporate world, which is basically students, what I would recommend is you are in the golden year of your life. Spend time learning about as many variations as you can. If you're interested in IT, don't stop yourself with saying, okay, I only want to learn one programming language or one technology. Whatever you can get your hands on, learn as much as possible. In 10 years, all those technologies will go away. But your exposure to learning the variations would help you grasp any new technology that comes in your way. So that's for the students. And the way I say them to do is build your own websites, put your resume up there, set up your own servers, explore the entire arena that is there. That gives you the confidence that, yes, I know what I'm talking about.
Well, that's very
People
good
who are,
advice.
yeah, people who are in the corporate world, you don't have a lot of time to do everything by yourself. Like you've been saying, Pete, that no one can learn everything. But you can target attending these conferences plus being part of the communities. So there are lots of communities in India. There is OWASP, there is Null, there are now DEF CON chapters also. All of these, most of them offer free monthly meetups. They're small gatherings, one or two sessions in them, but they are good ideas to expose yourself to new things that are happening around. Things that you might want to learn or things that you have no idea about, just go and attend those. Gives you a different perspective, makes you more able to grasp different concepts. Attending conferences like NullCon, there is CoCon, and there are a bunch of other conferences in India. If you attend those, there's a lot of B-sides conferences that have popped up in India and across the globe, I think. So attending these conferences gives you a pack, or rather a power pack punch. Within those 2 days, you got exposed to n number of entities. What I suggest people who are attending these conferences is keep your notepads handy, keep your phone notes handy, note down things that feel different to you, note down things that are interesting to you. 2 days, don't spend time trying to explore those. 2 days, just try to note down as many new things as you want to explore, and then go back and explore them. While you are at the conference, make connections. Connect with the speaker, connect with people who are talking about those topics. These connections will help you later on in understanding things.
Very good advice as well there. And, there's a lot more time to absorb everything that you're exposed to later on. You don't want to wait too long, right? Because things change
exactly.
so rapidly.
Yeah.
But yes, no, I agree that, forging the relationships, learning about different things, being exposed to stuff that you had no idea about, or maybe it's something that you just heard about, and now you're learning a little bit more about it, and it's really got your interest, right? So now it's like, wow, this is something that I thought I might want to learn more about. Now I definitely know I want to learn more about this. So, is there anything else in terms of like communities that people can get involved in? Because obviously there are, lots of these communities online. If someone is interested in, in learning more and getting online and getting engaged and, contributing, ultimately, what do you recommend that people do to start becoming more active?
I think the good part right now that we have is, compared to my old days, we have abundance of communities. So there's NullCon community, which keeps on doing events. You can basically follow Twitter and other social medias. You get involved about posts. There is Null community, which basically runs monthly meetups on different cities, which are like physical meetups. There are OWASP communities which are again running meetups physically, maybe doing some other additional activities. There are communities like Null who are doing more Hamla Bachao, or so Hamla is a Hindi word for attack, Bachao is a Hindi word for defense. So they do these sessions where it's attack or it's defense, or they have a mixed batch where a group of people would be attacking and a group of people would be defending. So you play a CTF in that manner. So
Nice.
you have all these variation of events that are happening in the world. What I tell people is, don't worry about which community should I join, which community is good, which community is bad, or which is more useful. Join a community. If you don't like it, move to the other community. No one is stopping you. No one is saying that you can only join one or two. I, for example, do a lot of activity with Null and NullCon, but I am parallelly involved with OWASP, Black Hat, to a bunch of other conferences, bunch of other communities. Be involved in as many places as you can. Don't burn yourself out by being involved too much. But at the same time, don't hold yourself back saying, okay, I am associated with one community, I'm only going to be in that one community. Be in as many communities as you want, and keep yourself open about learning. Be involved in the social media space. I think right now X or Twitter is kind of on the downfall or on the stagnated way. LinkedIn is kind of making more waves. Bluesky is there. Mastodon is there. Get involved in these communities. Understand how the systems are working and be part of as many discussion groups as you can.
Good information for everybody. I want to, we're already cranking through here, getting to the end, but before we do, I wanted to just share my screen for those watching video. And then if you could just tell us a quick little bit about Cyfinoid and what your company there is doing for people, because I see there's information on training and research. If we could just give us a quick overview of that.
All right. So Cyfinoid is a research-based company. We started with the idea that there are lots of topics which are left non-researched because either in the corporate world, you're too focused in protecting your own assets, or in the consulting world, you're too much focused on getting done with the project and moving on to the next project. So deep dive research is what gets missed out. So that's where we took up research as our primary area. We took Android, distributed web, and web applications as our key areas. As part of Android, we are basically focusing on the offense as well as defense aspects of Android applications. We're not looking at the OS itself, but we're more focused around the applications on the OS. Web applications side, the main focus is towards the supply chain security and the code-assisted auditing. So this is where I run another open source initiative called Code Vigilant, where we do code-assisted pen testing. Then the distributed web is more of a offshot, moonshot research area, where there are lots of open protocols that are coming up, like ActivityPub, and the indie web movement is there. Plus, there are lots of blockchain-based solutions that are coming up. The idea is to explore systems which are not requiring a central server to perform. So how those systems are evolving, how those systems are able to deal with the scenarios, and again, the offense and the defense aspect. So how can I attack them? And if I'm running them, how can I protect them? So on one side, we do all of these research, but then doing research on our own does not help anyone. So whatever we do as part of our research is what we are now piping out as our trainings. So that's where attack and defend Android applications. This is a training that I've been doing at Black Hat for, I think, past 2 years. And this is where we look at Android applications. We take an approach where we try to attack an Android application on day one. And then on day two, we basically say, okay, you attacked all of it. Now let's look at how you can protect all of this and safeguard your application. So both attack and defense. Similarly, break and fix applications, web applications is again a hands-on application assessment class, where we take an approach where there are 4 languages in which we have written 4 different applications. You go to those applications, you break them. Once you've broken them, you know how the attack works. Now you go and fix them. So by the end of it, all 4 applications, you have broken into them and then you've fixed them. So that gives you a holistic picture around the scenario. The supply chain security class, beyond the code, securing your software supply chain, there's a new class that we've started. Now, when it comes to supply chain security, everyone talks about SBOM, which is the software bill of material, and everyone is touting it as the only solution that is there. I kind of disagree with that. And what we're doing with this particular training is giving people an end-to-end idea of, hey, you know what? Not just your dependencies, but the credential for your Docker Hub ID, to your build servers, to the extensions that are installed on your developer's desktop. These are all part of your problem. So you should be aware of all of these, and you should have protections against all of these. So that's what we cover as part of this particular training. So again, the same approach. Day one, we talk about attacks. Day two, we talk about defense.
Awesome. I think that's such a great way to approach it too, because then people are able to, see exactly both sides of the coin, as we talked about, right?
Yeah.
You need to know how things work, and on the offensive side, you need to know the defensive side. You're actually taking them through that process in all areas of the training and research that you do. So it's very valuable, I would say, for people. And this is the sort of stuff that you present at the conference. I saw, it's kind of like course outlines. So that's very good. So fascinating stuff. And I really appreciate you sharing your information about what it is that your company does, and the NOCON conference, and really why that's so valuable to people. And I think anybody listening who has either attended a conference will agree with us, right? That they're very valuable.
Yeah.
And if you haven't, send some people in your business, or go yourself.
Yeah.
Even if it's a 2-day conference, go for a day. You may find yourself wanting to stay for a second day, right?
Yeah. So we have one more good thing when it comes to Nalcon about that. We do the conference in Goa. So you can actually mix business with pleasure, and you can actually go to Goa, have a vacation, attend a conference, and then come back.
See, that's the best of both worlds right there.
Yeah.
Right? Work hard, play hard. That's how you got to live. You only got one life to live. You got to make sure you make the most of it. So that's awesome. So we are coming to the end of this show, Anant. I appreciate your time. It always goes quick. Do you have any last thoughts, or sort of key, thoughts that you want to leave with our audience today before we wrap?
Just one, that this is a field which is right now changing dynamically, and every single week or a month, there is something new popping up. Either you keep yourself on toes and keep yourself up to date on all of these, or be part of these communities and these conference circuits, and that gives you a leg up, because you get all those things packed up in a smaller packet, and you can digest it easily. So that's what it is.
Awesome. Fantastic. I appreciate that. And, to all our listeners, we appreciate you listening to our show. And if you're interested in learning any more about Anant or Cyfinoid, you can check out their website. It'll be in the notes below this. The website is Cyfinoid, CYF as in Foxtrot, INOID as in Delta.com. Great information there. We're showcasing some of that for you that have been viewing it on our YouTube channel. If you're listening to it, make sure you check it out. You can see the different research areas and trainings that are available, some great information. And also find them on social media, right? LinkedIn and Twitter. And it's, we're all in this together. We're all trying to make this world a safer, more secure place. The criminals are not making it easy for us, but we have to keep fighting back, right? Be on the offense, be on the defense. So thank you so much for being here. And thanks to our listeners again for tuning in. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. So until next time, everybody, please stay safe, and thanks again.